Welcome to the It's in Queens podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Simmons, and this is the only podcast that focuses on my borough of Queens, the borough that has it all. This podcast comes to you thanks to the Queens Tourism Council and the Queens Economic Development Corporation, or QEDC. Together, they present our borough as a destination with something for everyone, whether you live here, you work here, or you just want to visit. As we dive into today's episode, we're focusing on one of the borough's most prized assets, its abundance of green spaces. Queens isn't really just about urban energy and diverse neighborhoods. It's home to a vast array of parks and nature preserves that provide tranquil retreats, scenic beauty, and recreational outlets for all ages. And one of the gems in this collection of green spaces is Alley Pond Park. It may not be as widely known as Central Park or Prospect Park, but Alley Pond offers an experience all its own. Stretching over 650 acres, Alley Pond Park is the second largest public park in Queens and is a haven for biodiversity. Known for its lush forests, wetland areas, and picturesque trails, Alley Pond is a living example of the natural beauty that Queens has to offer. What really makes Alley Pond special is its ability to connect people to nature right in the heart of Queens. And I was truly fortunate a few months ago to visit the park for the grand opening of the new Alley Pond Environmental Center, or APEC. To help us explore Alley Pond Park in even greater depth, I have a fantastic guest joining me this week. Professor William Nieter, author of the new book, The Story of Alley Pond, Past, Present, Future, has spent years researching and writing about this incredible park. His new book delves into the history, ecology, and community significance of Alley Pond, providing readers with a comprehensive look at one of the borough's most cherished green spaces. So let's get on with that interview. Professor Nieter, welcome to the It's in Queens podcast.
Hi, Jeff. Happy to be here.
So what inspired you to write the story of Alley Pond after so many years of being involved with the park and APEC?
Well, I probably had the idea in the back of my mind for a long time, but things came together in October of 2022. That's when I started. It was APEC's 50th anniversary, and I wanted to write something of a tribute piece to the organization and to my time with the organization. So that's really the timing. So I started to do a little bit of the outlining, and I'm very happy to say that exactly 1 year, October 2023, I was able to get it published.
So you've described Alley Pond Park as, quote, one of the most ecologically unique areas in the city. What makes the park and its surrounding ecosystem so special?
Well, it's hard to answer such a deep question in just a few words, but it's absolutely true. It is ecologically very, very rich. Now, maybe this is because of two reasons. Number one, the whole region is known as the Alley, and it is a great valley, a north-south trending valley on the north slope of Long Island. So it goes from some of the highest points that we have here in Queens, 200, almost 250 feet above sea level, where there are very old, mature forests in all different times of succession, right? And then the valley drops very rapidly, basically down to sea level. And at the sea level area, there are freshwater marshes, streams, springs, saltwater wetlands, and the great tidal creek that drains the middle of it. And then the valley goes further north, all the way up to Fort Totten. And so you have the great expanse of Little Neck Bay, between Douglaston and Bayside and Great Neck and Bay Terrace. So the diversity that you can get going basically across the whole cross-section of Long Island is immense. And you can find within the alley, you can find 14 different separate types of ecological systems. So And the other reason is almost just as important. Besides that, human beings have paved over much of the city. They've built up much of the area into urban and suburban areas. Now we've lost 80% in this very valley. We've lost 80% of what used to be there. But that has condensed the remaining nature into places like Oakland Lake and the Alley Pond Park wetlands and the woodlands and the bay. Right. So what is left is even richer than perhaps it would have been, because nature needs to find these open places. So I think it is the most ecological rich location in Queens. All right, there are great places in the Bronx and there are great places in Staten Island, but I'm not going to argue, priority. But for North Queens, there's no doubt that this is the richest ecological area.
So your book honors the volunteers who have played a role in rehabilitating Alley Pond. What were some of the most significant challenges they faced in transforming the park into the educational center it is today?
Well, the people who first came together, they didn't want to create an environmental center. The first idea was to create a nature center in the park for people like themselves, teachers. And so there were teachers, some very talented naturalists, some homeowners, and they came together and they started this little nature center in 1972. Didn't have any funding, didn't have any sophistication. It was nature center to lead nature walks. Okay. And along the way, these people had to learn a lot. None of us knew anything about fundraising. None of us knew anything about human resource management. I mean, this is not what we were trained for. We didn't know anything about audits. We didn't know anything about budgeting, finances, even record keeping. So we learned in some ways the hard way, by making mistakes along the way. But we did well, and we learned what we had to learn, and we grew slowly, into a professional organization. That's why in the book I say we were born in a joyous time, and then we had a difficult childhood or a difficult adolescence, and then we finally achieved a degree of maturity. By the APEC grew up across 3 decades, and finally reached the new century.
So, Professor, as an educator, you brought your students to APEC for research trips. What lessons did you hope your students took away from those experiences?
Well, there were field trips in almost every sort of class that I taught. Coastal systems, principles of ecology, natural resources, which was also like a conservation level kind of course. So there was always chances to run a local field trip from a local campus to a wonderful natural area, and we did that all the time. The one thing I can say for sure, by having run so many of these trips, is that you can learn some things from textbooks. You can learn many different things from the internet. And there are fantastic videos of nature videos that can take you all over the world. But you really can't connect personally to nature until you get out there even a little bit. I mean, you need a little bit of a hands-on direct connection. We used to do with the students, we used to do journaling when they were going out. What did you see? What did you feel? What did you, it wasn't just this plant is poison ivy and this plant is a beautiful sumac. It was, what did you experience on the time that you were out there, during the trips, and these things would be handed in and sometimes shared among all the students.
And I find journaling very, very important. It helps people to really think critically too. Um, your book was a family project with your wife editing it, your son designing the cover. What was the
Yes.
experience like
Yeah.
working with your family members on this?
Well, one thing I could say about Vicky, she's a wonderful editor. She corrects all the grammatical mistakes and all the little things that you want to get it as clear as you can. But it was her proximity to me while I'm writing this almost every day, where I would ask her a question, and say, "Do you think I should include this?" I mean, we left out as many different things as we included, and there were things that we wanted to definitely include in stories, and other things that we said, no, maybe we should pass on that one, and and do something a little more positive. I'll tell you, the book is completely positive. I mean, it is a tribute to the organization and to the park. And I didn't really want to write anything that was something of an expose or anything like of that nature. So, um, and my son, he's very talented. He has a degree in graphic design. He doesn't work actively in the field, but he had so many different skills. He said, Dad, you got any pictures of this? What's the cover going to look like? And I sent him a couple of pictures, and then in a matter of 2 or 3 opportunities, he was able to develop this beautiful wraparound cover. It starts on the front page, and then it wraps to the back, so that when you spread the book out, it becomes something of a complete landscape photo. And he knew things like, oh, you need the barcode in there. You need to, also put the ISBN number. And, he knew things about it that I would have had to hire someone. But I'm happy that we could work a little bit on this together.
So I was fortunate to be there for the ribbon cutting of the new building last year. I mean, you've seen APEC evolve over decades, including the opening of the new building. Talk a little about that moment as well, what it means to have this new building, but also what you envision for the future of the area.
Well, um, I, 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 I always looked at APEC and Alley Pond Park as past, present, and future, right? And most of the book is about the past and the present. But chapter 11, the last chapter, is what will the 21st century bring, right? And it's a very cautious chapter because I'm no seer, I can't predict, but I know that we could have a very, very bright future if we stay the course, and we do the things that we're really good at. But there are threats too, and I list 3 of the things that we have to do. We have to be aware of climate change. Now, no denying climate change is a global issue, right? We're not globally changing climate in the alley or in Queens, but all the effects of climate change will be felt at local levels, whether it's increased storms or sea level rise. We're going to feel it on the north shore of Queens. We're going to feel it in Jamaica Bay. We're going to feel it in the alley. That's where people live and experience what we will someday perceive as global change. So there are things that we can predict about climate change that will happen in New York City and will happen in Queens. And so that's number one. We have to be ready for that. Number two, we are an exceptional environmental education organization, right? There are environmental organizations that do teaching in environmental ed all over the world and all over the country, okay? But APEC is special. We are urban, right? And the urban people, the urban children need this more than people that might live up in the Hudson Valley or up in the Catskills or some other rural place or less developed place. like I said, we've paved over 80% of this watershed. 80 to 90% of the original heritage has been lost. So our children, we can't deprive them of that. I mean, urban children are a deprived population if they don't get to see nature. And we want to make sure that environmental education suited for urban populations are, equally serviced. And the last thing, I'm very conscious of this. I'm getting up in years. I'm not a young man anymore. And when I look back, I see wonderful progress being made up until this point. And many of myself and my contemporaries, many of us are ready to give up on what we can now retire from. Right? We're going to leave the field and leave it to what I termed the rising generation. The rising generation. It's our children and our grandchildren. And very soon, they're going to take over for you, and they're going to take over for me, and we're going to have to hand this over. And so we need to make the rising generation as well prepared and as strong as we can. We have to double down on our children and give them every chance to succeed and to go further with at least to hold the line with what we've protected so far. I call it the legacy. We've inherited what we have today, and we need to preserve the legacy, and we need to prepare them to protect it for their time in leadership. So those were the three things that I sort of cautioned about in that last chapter.
So this is, by the way, this is the first book you ever published, or you've published before?
No, this is the first book that I published because it came from my heart. I was a college professor, but I was much more of a college teacher than someone who published all that frequently. I was really a college administrator, to be very honest. I was working in a dean's office, and I was running the environmental studies program. I did not have the requirement that I had to publish, but I had to teach a lot, and that's what I did for the last 47 years. I retired in May of 2023.
How does it feel to be a published author?
Well, I'm proud of what I did. I've gotten only compliments. There are reviews on Amazon, which are positive. Only the people really that will have some connection to the park or the organization, may find any kind of deeper value in this. But this does sort of tell a general story about nature in New York City and why it's valuable. I know that your program is called It's in Queens.
Mm-hmm.
All at the other end of the borough, we have a world famous wildlife refuge, the Jamaica Bay Wildlife Refuge, shared by Queens and Brooklyn. There are other great natural areas. Forest Park is a little bit smaller. Fort Totten is a different kind of park, but it's right on the eastern edge of New York City, even out a little further than us, is we have Udall's Cove, which is much more natural than the alley itself. So there are wonderful natural areas all scattered throughout Queens and the Bronx and the other boroughs. People say name a park in New York City. Most people around the world are going to say maybe Central Park.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, not natural. It's not a natural place. I mean, it was completely man-made, man-constructed, and it has wonderful nature values, but it's not natural. The lakes are man-made. The trees are all planted and groomed. The fields are popular, very popular. But the only thing natural in Central Park, really, are the rock outcrops. Right? They go back to the very, very beginning. And but in the alley, it's different. In the alley, we have forests that go back to the American Revolutionary War. That's 250 years ago.
Wow.
And those forests have been growing and maturing and succeeding one another. So we have a salt marsh next to APEC, next to us, 4,000 years old. I mean, and it's the same surface that was there 4,000 years ago. The tidal creek is just as old. And these things have been passed down through centuries, many centuries.
So you mentioned Amazon before. Is that the best place for people to go? Where, if they want to find the book, want to buy the book, where should they go?
Well, I don't sell the book personally. Amazon does that for us. All you really need to do is search Amazon books. Just type in Alley Pond or the story of Alley Pond. And by doing that, you can get your choice of a cheaper, less expensive digital version, which is perfectly fine. Carries all the same pictures and illustrations. Or you can have a print copy, which I think it runs 158 pages, and good references. You know, I took a lot of references from a lot of other sources. So there's a few documents in there that you would want to look up. But it's Amazon books, and just search Alley Pond, and it comes right up.
And on that note, I'd like to thank you, Bill Nieter, author of The Story of Alley Pond, Past, Present, and Future. Thank you so much for appearing here on the It's in Queens podcast.
Thank you. And for any of your listeners, I'm very happy to speak further about this. If you wanted to contact me, either through Jeff or through APEC itself, I would reply to any inquiries. Okay. Thanks, Jeff.
Whether you're kayaking, bird watching, or simply taking a walk, there really is something new to discover in this vibrant ecosystem of Alley Pond. So why not add a visit to APEC to your calendar? It's located at 229-10 Northern Boulevard in Douglaston. Now, the building and animal room is open to the public 7 days a week except for major holidays. So you'll want to check their website at alleypond.org to find out about upcoming programs as well. It's a great time of year to get outside and to explore our open spaces and water bodies. And if you're looking for something to do this month, well, we always have you covered here on the It's in Queens podcast. That's where Rob Mackay comes in. He's with the Queens Economic Development Corporation and Queens Tourism Council, and each week he brings us details on some of the more dynamic events that are happening in our borough.
Well, Jeff, we have about 30 great events scheduled for this weekend. So I have to ask you, what's a guy like me supposed to do? I guess I'll go with the 18th century Tavern Nights at Queens County Farm Museum. To take place at the historic Adrian's Farmhouse, which actually dates to 1772. They start on November 8th and they continue until December 28th. These events are a chance to discover a taste of what dining was like in colonial times, even before the American Revolution. But they're also really fun and nutritious. Properly dressed waiters, or I should say timely dressed waiters, serve dishes made from traditional recipes cooked over an open hearth with local ingredients. You know, nothing but local ingredients back then. Attendees use period tableware and eat by the light of flame-free candles. There's a little cheating, of course, because you can order, let's just say, fresher beer and wine to go with the food. All told, there are 2 of these 18th century dinners planned for November and 5 in December. So you can choose whenever works best for you. Thanks, Jeff, and bon appetit.
That's just a few of the things that are happening in Queens. Thanks, Rob. Remember, the place to go to discover and explore everything that's on the horizon in Queens is, well, very easy to remember. It's at the It's in Queens website, and that website address is itsinqueens.com. By the way, if you're interested in learning about more business-related news in our borough, how to help your business or a friend's business or a family member's business, well, here's where you need to go. Head right over to the QEDC's website at queensny.org. And when you're there, or when you visit the It's in Queens website, sign up for the newsletter. When you visit any place in Queens, such as Alley Pond, snap some photos and share them with us. Make sure to use the hashtag #It'sInQueens when you post on Instagram or X, because your photo could become our photo of the week. I'm your host, Jeff Simmons, and that's it for this week's It's in Queens podcast.